Meeting of the Westborough Planning Board. We have a pretty short agenda, I hope, this evening. We have a decision on the site plan review application for 54 Otis Street, an MVP grant support letter for wastewater study, informal discussion on the amendment to the West Park Drive extension, definitive plan approval, and then we have an item, agenda item to discuss goals and objectives. We also had under new business a request for a letter of support. Jim, remind me for the
Yeah, I'd like to add under new business discussion for a letter of support for the Otis Street Mass Works
right, the Mass Works
implementation grant.
All right. So we'll start with the site plan review application for 54 Otis Street. We got a draft site plan review. We should have all had a chance to review that. Jim, do you want to take us through that quickly?
Sure.
Bob, Bob Buckley's here for the applicant. You've had a chance to review it? And you're okay with it? Any changes? All right. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to thank Bob and Christine for all the work that they did on this decision, all their ideas, everything is great. It's a great decision. I feel very good about it. The first two pages are boilerplate and description of the project. I won't bother to read the existing conditions or the project description. We're familiar with the project description. Just to summarize really quickly, they're proposing a 100,000 gross square foot building in a 20,000 square foot two-story office space on the site. There was a typo on page 3 in the fourth category down, third line. It talks about water and sewer division. Sewer was misspelled. I've corrected that. I found no other typos. So that being the case, I'm going to proceed to page 4. Under findings, the planning board finds and determines pursuant to section 1244 and 5952 of the zoning bylaws, subject to the conditions set forth herein, that the project constitutes a suitable development and will not result in substantial detriment to the neighborhood. The planning board further finds that the project complies with section 4700 Aquifer Watershed Protection District of the zoning bylaws and meets or exceeds the DEP stormwater management standards. Groundwater recharge of runoff is provided. The proposed use does not generate hazardous waste, and no hazardous material storage is proposed. And the reason that this finding is important is because the site is in the Aquifer Protection District, and the zoning bylaws requires the planning board to make a finding whether the proposed use complies with the bylaw, or conversely, if any special permits are needed. And in this case, it complies with the bylaw, so you don't need any special permits. Conditions of approval. The site plan is approved subject to the following conditions. The first one is the typical boilerplate from the building commissioner requiring as-built drawings, record drawings prior to certificate of occupancy. We require that in all our site plan reviews. Number 2, there shall be no parking of construction vehicles or construction worker vehicles in the right-of-way on Otis Street at any time. All vehicles shall be parked interior to the site. Number 3, there shall be no loading or offloading of vehicles or materials in the right-of-way on Otis Street at any time. All activities involving loading or offloading materials shall be conducted interior to the project site. Number 4, the building on site, should the building on site become vacant at any time, the owner shall be responsible for maintaining active water and electric service to the building and ensure that all points of entry are secured. This requirement is necessary to maintain public safety for the site and its surrounding neighbors in the event of the police and fire emergencies.
Can I interrupt a second? Mark, do you want comments as we go through, or do you want to wait till the end?
no, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, my question on number 4 was, should there be any requirement for the owner, if the building is vacant, to provide security other than just locking the doors?
I think that's covered in the last sentence. This requirement is necessary to maintain public safety. Do you think that's enough, Jim?
Well, this requirement only refers to the...
So how do you mean security? Just so if the building is sealed and it has water and electricity?
And all points of entry are secured?
Well, okay, I'm just throwing this out as a question because it's a large building. close to a public street, whether we've ever required, them to have a security
Company on
company.
site.
Not just look at it occasionally. I mean, that's my only concern because of where its particular placement is. I don't know whether this is normal. It just was something when I read this because they've locked the doors, but.
Yeah, I know you're thinking about the cinema.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously, that's an unusual circumstance because they didn't know who the owner was.
Right.
In this case, there'll still be an owner to the building. We know who the owner is. This is a boilerplate. If you want something more than that, I think we need to discuss it with the applicant's counsel.
Okay, I just wondered about that, only because I'm concerned about the building and its placement and where it is, and when it just says you've locked the doors, but.
For the record, Robert Buckley, Raymond Bronstein. Yeah, there will be electronic security and motion security, the general security. I don't know, I do know other locations, they do have periodic, I don't want to say investigation, but checking. But I just wouldn't want to commit to that because I don't know what it would be. But it would be very secure, so.
All right, as I said, I just wanted to raise that with the board because I'm always concerned about, buildings that are way off the street, I don't care about, but buildings that are right on the street, if it became vacant. So I just thought I'd raise it.
Yeah.
All right, any discussion on that? Hazel, do you want us to entertain different language?
As I said, I just wanted to raise that as a concern. I think that if they became vacant, then we might have Bob come back and we would discuss further security measures, and let's just leave it at that.
All right.
Okay.
Great. Okay. Look, Jim, sorry to interrupt, but.
That's all right.
Can you
It's
move
a
on?
good question. It is, good question, good point. Lighting. Outdoor lighting owned and maintained by the applicant shall conform to the requirements of the Westborough zoning bylaw and as represented on the plans. The illumination level of these outdoor lights shall not exceed the state maximum specified for parking areas. There shall be no glare or light pollution caused to adjacent properties. C, new lighting installations in the parking area shall not exceed a maximum of 25 feet in height, including the installation base. The lighting fixture shall be cut off design so as to prevent light spilling outside of the parking area. D, lighting mounted on the exterior of the building shall be shielded and focused downward to prevent upward bounce or spill onto adjacent properties. Those are all boilerplate requirements. Number 6, stormwater management operations in management plan shall identify where snow will be stockpiled. Number 7, in the event that weather conditions prevent installation of landscape materials, as shown on the plans, prior to a request for occupancy, the applicant may request that the board accept a security bond or other performance guarantee reasonably acceptable to the planning board to guarantee completion of landscape elements. The planning board will determine a reasonable value for this security. Number 8, prior to erection of structural steel, the applicant shall have addressed and resolved the comments contained in the tie and bond letter dated March 29th, 22, to the reasonable satisfaction of the town's engineer. That's correct. To the extent any resolution requires modification of the site plan, the applicant shall submit to the planning board for review and approval an amendment to the approved site plan. Number 9, fire protection. There will need to be one fire hydrant that is located 100 feet of the fire department connection. B, locked gates. All locked gates will require the installation of a rapid access key box, known as a Knox box, with preference for an Opticom activated access control. Number C, all private fire hydrants shall be painted red. Hours of construction. Number 10, the hours of construction operations, including demolition and materials processing activities for the project, shall be limited to the hours of 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 7 a.m. to 12 p.m. on Saturday. This includes the starting and idling of vehicles and machinery. Sundays and legal holidays shall be days of no operation. Operation of construction equipment by a paid contractor outside the hours specified above shall be allowed only by written permission of the building commissioner. Number 11, The applicant shall comply with all applicable federal, state, and local regulations, including but not limited to CMR Chapter 90, Section 16A, governing vehicle idling at the site. And that, if you wonder what that chapter is, it states how long a vehicle can idle unattended. So someone can get off his vehicle and take a lunch break, can't do that. However, the vehicle can idle for approximately 5 minutes. Number 12, during the construction of the site, the applicant shall ensure that the area adjacent to Otis Street be free and clear of construction debris and material and other locations along Otis Street as may be necessary due to the construction activities at the site by a means of a street sweeper with dust control water feature.
I'd like to add the third sentence, where free and clear of construction debris materials in other location and along Otis Street, because when we did the other application on Otis Street, we had language that said that if any debris fell on the street, that they were responsible for cleaning it up. And I don't think this is particularly clear because this says adjacent to. It doesn't say.
But in parentheses, it says
And along.
and in other locations.
Yeah, but
That's all.
I just would like to clarify it. If I think we can clarify it, but just add construction debris and materials and in other locations and along Otis Street. So I'd just like to add the word "and" for clarification so we know that it includes Otis Street.
That doesn't bother me.
I'm interested, I just like clarity.
Yeah, I have no objection to that.
I see no point in it. It's fine.
I think it's fine the way it is, but I don't see it materially changing anything. So that's fine, Hazel, we can add the word "and." So, and in other locations and along Otis Street?
Yeah,
Okay,
or in another, yeah. I just wanted to make it clear because when it says adjacent doesn't mean Otis Street, it means, could be on the sidewalk next to Otis Street, so.
Yep.
okay, that's fine.
Okay, number 13, as contemplated in the Boston to Worcester Airline Trail multi-use trail feasibility study and the town's Otis Street corridor study prepared by MDM Transportation Consultants dated September 2021, the corridor study, the applicant shall grant an easement to the town in form and substance reasonably acceptable to the applicant and the town, and the applicant shall construct a 10-foot wide shared use path along the frontage of the site, and the applicant shall construct such shared use path as part of the project.
I had another question there. There's no time limit here on when this will have to be done. Do we want thinking about putting some sort of timeline on
That's a
it?
good point, prior to occupancy.
Well, I would think that would,
I was going to say within a reasonable
I
time
don't think
after
we can-
occupancy.
I don't think we could grant occupancy without satisfying the terms of the permit, but we could certainly put a time limit in there, right?
Well, the thing is that they're part of the corridor plan. We're applying for a grant, and it may take several years, but
Yeah.
he may wish something else.
I think that it would be appropriate to say diligently pursue the construction of it, because we're at the mercy of the state and your contractors, because it really will be a municipal job, but we'll do it in front of our site as, and we'll diligently pursue it as, because it will all be coordinated and done hopefully at once, but I just am uncomfortable with the time period because, the state and your contractors and.
Yeah, but the state doesn't apply to your part of the sidewalk is not under state control.
No, well, we'll put the sidewalk in, I guess. They just may want to do it in coordination, the whole corridor.
Yeah, no, I understand that aspect, but I just want to make sure your part is done sooner rather than later.
Could we suggest that if there's a delay at the request of other regulatory authorities, that the applicant can bond over it? So very similar to you'd have with respect to landscaping, you'd have the security for it. So you'd have a reasonable security to make sure that it happens.
Okay, so let's say everything is going to go well, according to schedule.
Yeah.
Would it be acceptable then to put in there prior to occupancy?
I don't have a problem with, I think, how it's going to play out, but I just can't foresee, because we're not in control of the process. And if, for instance, if the state...
Well, okay, but Bob, I'm sorry to interrupt, Bob. Go ahead, finish. My point would be, we could put prior to occupancy and then put a provision in that if for some reason it's not done prior to occupancy, then you can bond it.
That's fine, that's, yeah.
So I can use the same language that we use for landscape?
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
That's fine.
I'll add that. So Bob, I'll add that and give you a copy tomorrow.
So just to be clear, does everyone understand that we're going to set a time limit on construction of the path through, it has to be done by occupancy in front of their lot, and if they don't do it by occupancy, then they have to post a bond.
If I could suggest final occupancy, final certificate of occupancy, not a temporary.
Final certificate of
Final.
occupancy.
Okay.
Clarify why this is different, Mr. Chair, than the applicant at 66 Otis Street, where we went round and round on this B-wall trail. The applicant doesn't have any control over the B-wall construction. If we wanted to have them put in a sidewalk, as we did with 66, that would seem reasonable by the date of occupancy, but I don't understand why. I can, appreciate the bonding over, but the applicant may be waiting for the state and this Mass Works grant and everything else to consummate.
It's
As you
just
know,
that
I've had a concern, hold on just a second. I've had a concern that the town doesn't have any kind of specifications for this B-wall multi-use trail to even provide to applicants at this time.
Yeah,
So I think this is totally
When
unnecessary.
you say that, I think the difference is at 66 Otis, we didn't have the corridor study.
Yes, we did.
No, I think that 66 was, they paid for the corridor study as part of I'm thinking of 50 Otis, they paid for the corridor study. So 66, you're right, we did have that.
66 was the Brupo, and we insisted they give us an easement for a B-wall trail with no specifications and no date of construction. I don't see how this site is any different. And I think the applicant, in their own self-interest, would put in a sidewalk that would connect to the, again, that area is under construction. There is no pedestrian access on the west side of the street at this time. There is on the east side of the street. So what are we asking them to do?
Tim, I think it's clear what we're asking them to do. You're suggesting changing that, and that, I think, should have been brought up during the public hearing.
I'm just saying, I'm pointing out that the applicant doesn't have any control over the timing of the B-wall project.
Completely understand that, Tim, but
So how do we want to remedy that?
Well, okay, we have a plan that shows a 10-foot path,
Yeah,
right? We can't change that plan because the public hearing is closed.
right?
So if you're proposing something besides what's in...
No, I'm asking what we are asking the applicant to do by the time they get a certificate of occupancy or this bonding over period. What is the
Put on
time frame for
It's
that?
the 10-foot wide shared use
It won't be
path.
when they put it in.
What?
It won't be when they put it in.
No, they're putting it in.
Right. But it
Right.
will just cover the front of their property
That's correct.
until the continuous part is put
Exactly.
on.
Yeah, just to make sure that
So
part gets
are you
done.
proposing changing some language in...
No, I'm trying to understand what the change is that's being proposed here.
Okay.
I'm fine with the language as it reads.
The change that was proposed was to put a time limit on when that construction would be done in front of their project, and if it wasn't done prior to final occupancy, then they would post a bond to assure that they would do it once.
Once when?
Well, once, hopefully, the Mass Works grant is.
Okay.
At the very least, they'll have to build it in front of their lot, and if it takes us 10 years to get the money together to finish the B-wall, they've done their portion.
All right.
Any further questions?
Nope.
Jim, you comfortable now? I mean, do we need to?
I'm fine, I'm
You've got
fine.
the language? All right.
I'm
All
fine.
right. We finished the conditions because I had one comment on
I don't think we finished the conditions, so we still had a,
on hours of construction, all right. At some place, I'd like to add a condition, or I'd like to talk about
I
it.
think the rest of the conditions are boilerplate, the
Yeah.
list of letters and Jim,
Yeah,
I'll let
everything
you-
else is just a list of comments that we received, and I noted that we received no public comments during the public hearing process.
Hazel, what did you want to,
All right, I noticed that there's no language in this document concerning the Mass Works grant that we're going for, and I wonder whether there should be something in here. I know that Bob's client supports this, but I just want to make sure that there is coordination between his project and our application for the Mass Works grant, so that it all is moving smoothly together, and if there's any information or paperwork or things that need to come from Amazon, or come from Bob's client, that will be provided speedily. Do you understand what I'm
yeah, I
talking
understand,
about?
but I'm not sure it belongs in a site plan
It may not.
application.
I'm just-
You know,
I'm
that's,
raising the question.
that's I don't want to say a regional plan, but it goes outside the scope of this. This is a site plan, it's not a special permit.
Mr.
Bob, do you
Chairman?
want to address
Yeah,
that?
That may be, I
I'd
just-
be glad to address it. It's in our best interest too, because in the prior site plan, we committed, we're paying the consultant for the town $100,000. And we've been setting up the meetings all along, so it's in our best interest to coordinate. And I was going to say at the end, you haven't seen the last of me, because I'll be working with Jim and the staff over the summer to get that report or the application in. We've been working on it diligently since the close of the last meeting, so I don't think you have to worry about it. There's a big financial commitment that is already in place that we're funding, and to date, the cooperation with the town, I know that we've had a number of meetings, has been very good. So we're more worried about some of the other towns getting this stuff into us, but we're moving at breakneck speed.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not worried about it. I just wondered whether it was appropriate to mention the Mass Works project in the site plan. It may not be, but I just wanted to raise it
Jim, do you have any comments
because
on
it's
that?
so integral.
I don't think we
That's
need
fine.
it in there.
That's fine. I just wanted to raise it in front of the board.
Jim, you all said,
Yeah, I'm all set.
okay, just one thing on page 3, I think it's the 4th paragraph, sewer is spelled wrong.
Yep,
Yeah,
I
he
pointed it out.
mentioned that.
I pointed it out.
It's that we need, okay. All right, so any further discussion of the draft site plan approval? Does anybody want to make a motion?
I move that the planning board approve the site plan for Atlantic Westborough Realty LLC at 54 Outer Street with the conditions established in the planning board decision dated April 26, 2022, with minor additions at the planning board meeting at, what is it, May 3rd, 2022.
I'll second that motion.
Discussion of the motion. All those in favor? That's 5-0.
Thank you very much. Just for the chair and the board's information, I'll be contacting Jim to have those meetings on the trail and the easements.
You anticipated my next question.
No, we have the easement, we're ready to sit down and work it through. And number 2, you'll be seeing me around probably with Jim and the rest of the staff on the Mass Works grant, because the time is rapidly approaching on that. And 3, you may see me back on another project very soon, So it's been a pleasure. I thank you for your professionalism and look forward to working through the summer on these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Thank you.
So I see people here for the West Park extension. Can we jump to that on the agenda, Jim, and so we can get people home early?
Is that okay with you? Okay.
Dan, you're going to need a few minutes to set up? Dan Feeney, are you going to need a minute to set up?
Yes, he's doing it.
No, I know, I just want to I was going to discuss our next meeting dates if. Okay, so while he's doing that, can we talk about the meeting? I think you all received an email that we have to have a meeting on the 24th because the posting for this item did not get, the newspaper screwed it up. So basically, we have a meeting currently scheduled on the 17th. We'll have to have a meeting for just this item on the 24th. I'd like to try to avoid 2 meetings consecutively. For selfish reasons, I will have to attend the meeting on the 17th remotely, because I'll be picking my son up from college. So, not that I'm the only one that matters, I just would like to be here. So, I could do it remotely on the 17th, but I want to know what the rest of you feel about trying to move the 17th to the 24th. We would still have to have a quorum on the 17th come and just extend those public hearings for a week. So it would still require you to show up for 5 minutes or so.
Well, there was one matter that was extended to the 17th.
Two
matters,
Yeah, the
public hearing.
Spectrum Health and the other one.
And
Have they been
Spectra.
queried about move?
Spectrum Health and 2229 Research. Both of them were continued to the 17th. You would need a quorum of this board to vote to extend it yet further to the 24th. And that would have to happen on the 17th because the public who may not be watching tonight because they thought they didn't need to watch might watch on the 17th and not realize what you're going to do. So you need to have at least 3 people here to vote an extension. I can speak with the 2 applicants, knowing the circumstances with those applications. I don't think it'll be difficult. You just have to make sure that you meet the quorum requirements.
Yeah, and if they don't agree to extend it, I'll just do the meeting remotely. But again, I don't want to force this on everyone. I just would rather take care of everything on the 24th.
Yeah, I can be here on the 17th if need be to just adjourn the other 2.
Yeah, it would be presumably a 5-minute meeting.
Right.
But we'll know as soon as Jim queries the applicants whether
Yeah,
we
I'll
have
reach
to
out
have
to the applicants tomorrow.
whether we have to have a full meeting, and then you would chair the meeting and I would just attend
Okay,
remotely.
that's fine.
Either way, you're going to chair that meeting on the 17th. Okay. All right. Is everybody okay with that solution? All right. All right, great. So we'll plan on 3 public hearings on the 24th, and the one that we're about to hear about, and then those 2, Research Drive and Oak Street.
Spectrum.
Oak Street, yeah. Okay. Dan, go ahead if you're ready.
Let me know if I need to use the microphone or if it's okay.
Just talk loud.
So we're here tonight informally with the planning board to discuss an amended definitive subdivision plan for the West Park Drive extension. Board members, we had previously had approval to extend a roadway on the cul-de-sac of the existing end of West Park Drive down to Flanders Road. The work was coordinated with a MassWorks grant for improvements to Flanders Road, West Park Drive, both intersection, as well as a section of the Bylaw Trail. So the proposed amendment to the subdivision, I'll just start down Flanders Road here to the south and work our way to the north. There's no proposed modification to the proposed roadway layout as you come up from Flanders Road until you get to the southern driveway entrance to 2200 West Park Drive. So it's the same roadway layout, coming down in that direction. But instead of bearing more back towards the west and cutting through a wooded area in there and tying into the 2200 West Park Driveway, we're just going to tie into the 2200 West Park Driveway adjacent to that southern driveway entrance. There will be a section of roadway that needs to be reworked just to get the grades to work in that area. The current driveway down there is super elevated, so it all pitches to one curve line. So we're gonna have to transition that to a ground roadway to match the rest of the roadway. So from that point, heading to the north, the intent is to use the 2200 West Park driveway in its existing location, in its existing state, all the way up to the existing cul-de-sac. There's no change to the proposed location of the trail. So the Wall Trail will run along the eastern side of proposed subdivision roadway extension to a point just south of 2200 West Park Drive, and probably run with 134 East Road, across the road, continue heading north on the western side of the proposed subdivision roadway, and then tie in to the shelter easement area that runs east-west through there. We're also not proposing any modifications to the stormwater basins. There's a proposed basin located to the north of the wetland system that's off Landers Road down there, as well as a proposed basin located adjacent to not far from the West Park Drive extension of ties. So there'll be a little bit less impervious area associated with the proposed revisions. So the basin will be adequate. We'll have to update the stormwater calculations further to capture modifications. We are going to take a section of the existing West Park Drive, northern portion, and write it down in that basin in order to match the existing drainage that exists out there today. There's no proposed changes to the number of lots. If you'll recall, the proposed subdivision didn't create any new additional lots originally. It was all lots that previously existed in the frontage, either off of the cul-de-sac of West Park Drive or Flanders Road. There will be some slight modifications to the line configuration because the roadway now is changing. So some of the land that was going to go to 2200 West Park Drive will now be around 2300 or 2100 West Park Drive. Will still be compliant with zoning requirements for those lots. It's sort of a minor change just to account for the shift in proposed driveway. And all of the waivers that were previously requested as part of the subdivision review are still being requested. And in addition to that, there are a couple of additional waivers associated with the section of West Park Drive that's going to be utilized. It has to do with the pavement width, the horizontal curvature of the road, as well as just the general construction materials used for that driveway. So we're just asking for waivers so that the existing driveway can be used in its current state. So that's sort of an overview of the modifications since the approval of the subdivision.
All right, so we're going to go more into this on the public hearing, but do we have anyone question at this time?
I think it's a good improvement, and I'm quite pleased that we're not taking out a lot of trees. I mean, I just think at this point, any trees we can save is important for the environment, and the fact that we're not cutting through mature trees, which is what's up there, and using an existing driveway makes perfect sense to me.
If I could just point one thing out, we met with Lisa and her staff yesterday just to kind of go over the proposal and the design that's been done today. And we will need to clear just a little bit of the trees adjacent to the northern 2200 West Park Drive entrance there. As a car, we want to leave this parking lot, the site listing is looking for a car coming around, and it is constrained by the street, so it's not clearing of the entire area, but just enough to create that site plan to allow for proper egress.
Any other comments? So, Dan, are there going to be like speed bumps or something near that curve? Because that's a pretty sharp curve.
Yeah, that, that was another of.
And you'll
Lisa's
present
comments.
signage as far as,
We're gonna have to look into traffic calming measures for the speed, posted speed limits or speed bump. The existing Westborough Drive, does have a speed bump.
Yep.
On it, like that happens to keep the slope of the roadway, not necessarily the horizontal line of it, but I think, travel vehicles coming down, it would be appropriate to have
and,
some sort of speed bump there.
and signage, some type of arrows or, that was my initial reaction to it. The other thing I was, without getting super into the reasons why you're requesting this change, I'd like to see, if we're going to relax the road standards, I'd like to see a time limit on that. In other words, I'd like to see this project commence pretty quickly. Otherwise, we could just go back to the approval that was already issued. That makes sense? All right. Any other comments? Jim, do you have anything?
So actually, that's a good segue to what I would like to talk about. I just want to talk about the project schedule to give Mark some comfort here. We have, as you know, a public bid process where we had a bidder that was chosen, and they have extended their price guarantee to conduct the work within the bid that they submitted about 4 weeks ago through June 15th. So we have to get through this process before June 15th. They need to have a written decision. So our public hearing is May 24th. We will probably need to meet again. I think our first meeting in June is June 1st. So we'll need to hold those two meetings sacred so that we can be done with this process so the town can execute the contract. And actually, I know that Caruth has to do a few things with the town before we can execute that contract as well. And so the timing is very important. So you have the plans in front of you. I ask you to take a look at them. So for example, traffic calming measures are a very good point. I took some notes on those. I'd like to have as many comments as possible on these plans so that when we open the public hearing on the 24th, we can substantively discuss them. So I can begin drafting a decision for approval so the town and the developer can move forward with this work under the contract that has been guaranteed and extended 60 days from the original bid. Because we will not be able to get those prices if that date expires.
Okay. Okay, I mean, I don't know what, I think we'll do our part on that, but, some of it's up to the applicant too, but they've obviously moved very quickly so far, so I expect them to continue that.
They have, and we've submitted a draft contract amendment already to MassWorks. They have it in their hands. It needs to be executed by our town manager. I wanted the MassWorks department to see it first, so if there were any comments, I could change that. I could make amendments rather to the application prior to the town manager signing it. But I expect that to actually be done tomorrow.
Does Conservation have to sign off on this too?
No. Oh, on the subdivision? Yes. But that can come after. I mean, we can conditionally approve this to them getting an order of conditions. And they've begun already reviewing it because I've spoken with our conservation agent. You have the town engineer.
Go ahead, Lisa.
I have a question about, it's more of a process question. So if you approve this alternative plan, do we give up as the town the original design? And the reason I say that is, the horizontal alignment isn't ideal, but it's fine for the conditions that we have now and probably the near future. But my their partners was going to be.
Yeah, I think,
They plan lots as they get developed, I can see where this design is not happening.
so Lisa, I think that would probably come with a project that, a new project that was built. We would look at it and say, okay, the road maybe needs some improvements to handle the increased traffic flow. But if you're comfortable with this design, again, I'm probably not going to move forward unless you sign off on it. So I think they're aware of that. But I think at this point, my feeling is a future building site plan review or some type of, we would factor that in and that maybe ask for some street improvements at that time. Yeah, what is the time limit on the original approval?
2 years.
Okay, so, but that design would already be done. Presumably, Dan would just give that to some applicant for free, because. Mark, do you have comments on that?
So once we move ahead with this and using the existing road, rather than, that would be it. We have one other property that we can no longer build as much as we could when we bought it. That would be 2100, 2300 West Park Drive. That already has the frontage. We would not change the plan once we move forward. It doesn't make sense. So,
There's a difference between not changing it and maybe doing some improvements to this plan that you're presenting now, and I think that is what Lisa's asking, is that,
right, but would it be, 28, 30-foot wide road, site?
well, I'm suggesting that
curbing,
we
we
cross that
could-
bridge when we get to it, though, right? That's something we'd look at down the road, whenever that application came in. And this is what we're approving, or, looking at. Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, just as a point of clarification to maybe help Mark, I think, 2 marks. I think that what Mark Silverberg meant, what the chairman meant, is that in the event that you had a new development come in on West Park Drive that had significant more traffic, whatever that might be, that time we would address the road. It might not happen, or it might happen, but that applicant would need to make the revisions to the road. We're not telling you that in 5 years you need to make the revisions to the road. That's why he said we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, but that bridge might not make sense for us to cross.
When the time comes.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that's why we're here, because the existing plan doesn't make sense anymore. It's just too expensive. We're not able to build a single square foot more than we're already permitted for.
Understood.
So,
Yeah, but Mark, anytime you come in with a new application, right, we may look at the street conditions and say, well, you need to do street improvements, right? It could be anywhere it could be anywhere in town, right? We've asked for street improvements, we've asked for,
But the traffic study that you did, warrant the money, was build out conditions with partners, the development next to 800 that you don't have right now. So that was premised on full build out. So you can't, if you're gonna go to full build out, then you should have full road to the standards that were originally approved. I mean, that would be my recommendation when they come in for those other 2 lots and something else comes in.
again, we don't have anything coming in right now, so I think we're dealing with the present, not, a future project that we don't know about. It could be a project that doesn't generate traffic, and then we wouldn't need street improvements, right? We saw that at the Verizon site, right? So I think we're speculating on something that hasn't come in yet. So I think we're just dealing with, I just want to know that, under current conditions, you're okay with this change. And if we are going to change it, I'd like to see it. And if we get something up there, I mean, we could see a zoning change. We could see, who knows down the road what could change and what kind of traffic could be generated along that road, and we would have to ask for improvements if they were necessary. I mean, I don't know why that is controversial. It seems like that's something we would do on any new project. We would consider whether street improvements were required. Am I wrong?
No, so what's happened here is the economy has changed dramatically in a short period of time since they had their original approval. And the construction prices for the MassWorks portion of the project increased significantly. Their construction costs for this piece of road that we will not require him to approve, but rather use the existing driveway, has increased exponentially. Their costs are significantly higher. The market may change in years from now, but as for right now, this driveway will work, given the traffic flow that they have there currently.
Yeah, I don't know what again, I'm not going to say that this solution is good forever. There's no way I can say that.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying
But I think that's what
that the construction climate may change in the future, and they may have more tenants there. They may have more development there. At that time, you re-examine the road.
They may redevelop a site that, with a more intense use. I don't know what the future holds. I can't say that road's going to be adequate 100 years from now. I won't be around to see it, but that doesn't mean I'm going to give some kind of carte blanche and say that road will never need to be improved. I'm just saying for now, I'm okay with this change.
Right, and this decision on amendment to the plan does not need to address future conditions because you don't know what they'll be.
I just had a question of the engineer about current conditions, and you said you expressed concerns around the design. Will those be addressed before the 24th? Do those represent an impediment to the applicant?
They're mainly the issues that I mentioned. It was the access out of 2200 West High Garage, building driveway, the site distance along there. It was, you were having this transitional zone, making sure that everything works. It was a sort of a whole point of everything right around here. So it was issues like that we said, they're all things that we can address and will address privately here.
All right, good. That was the main thing. Time's of the essence. So the road that is being constructed or the changes that are being made we need to be pretty buttoned up on those by the 24th, right?
Right.
Sign off from the engineer, as you mentioned. And
We do need to issue an updated plan set. So that's in the process of happening now.
okay.
This initial plan set was to really get, the framework down with as much detail as we can get in this process now.
The existing land, 2100, 2300, let's call it 2300 West Park Drive. It has frontage on West Park Drive. It's ready to go. We don't need to build West Park Drive extension to build at 2300 West Park Drive. It has the frontage, it has, a private common road. So all we're doing is increasing. We wouldn't want to give that up for some future, demands to put in, a new road or whatever. We're looking to just add what we have right now and not give that up. Or else it doesn't make sense for us to make this extension. I mean, it's a tough road for us now, and I think with Chris Egan and Caruth Capital, and having worked on this, spent $900,000 to date, we're close to walking away from this, and we don't want to give up anymore.
But you don't have you don't even have an application in on 21 or 23 or whatever it is, right? Like, how do you expect me to say that, if you come in with a proposed use, that we're not going to ask for street improvements? That's, I mean, whether it be to this section or elsewhere along West Park Drive, that's I can't predict that.
Well, let's say, for example, we don't do this, we spent the money, it's too, it doesn't make any sense because we can't build another square foot there. And we say, okay, we come, in a couple of weeks and we say, okay, we want to build whatever we can build now at 2300 West Park Drive. It has the frontage, it's connecting to the private road. Why would you want to work against this?
I really don't know how to answer that. Nobody's trying to work against you. I think what we're doing here is trying to work with you and going out of our way to do that, right? I mean, isn't that what we're all here for?
3 years from now, we have someone that wants, and okay, now what you're saying is you can pretty much do anything to widen the road and connect and, add what we first came in.
Okay.
And it doesn't make sense.
So when you say do anything, at that point, it would be a site plan application, right?
Right.
And the only thing we can reasonably do is something that would be necessary for the safety, right? Now, if you're asking me to say we're not going to ask for something that would be necessary for the safety of the users of that road, I'm probably not going to give you that kind of waiver, I guess, right? I mean, if you've got to tell me what's going to come in 3 years. Right? We've got to go through that whole process. And then I'm going to say, if I'm still on the board, I'm going to say, yeah, we can live with this driveway for that use. We don't need improvements. Or I may say, no, this is past the threshold that I'm comfortable with, and I'm going to ask for improvements. That's the same with any project, though, Mark. I mean, even if you came in with a project at 2300 right now, even without that, I might ask for street improvements because there might be a safety issue, right? Whether it's on this section of driveway or further up West Park Drive, or at the intersection with Route 9. I don't know what that would be. I have no idea what that would be. I need a specific project to discuss that coherently.
I think we're speculating at this point, and it's not doing any good. I mean, what we're trying to do is to accomplish this project, which is before us, and this is an alternative that we've come up with that seems to be agreeable with the applicant. We'll work with the Mass, whatever it is, Mass Works project will accomplish what we have been trying to accomplish with this and trying to speculate in the future about what's going to happen. There's no possible way that that's going to do us any good at this particular time. I mean, we're looking at this project. I think we see what the change has been. It seems to be reasonable under the circumstances. And I think speculation at this point is doing us no good whatsoever.
I kind of agree with that.
Mark, we're doing the best we can. I mean, we're trying to work with you, and I think this is a good alternative that we've looked at and talked about, and I think it'll serve you and the real estate that you own up there, and will also accomplish putting in the street, the traffic light and the further access down from your property onto Flanders Road, which can only help you in the long run.
Look, Mark, I think there's a difference between saying you're going to have to go back to the original design. That's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that if this is approved and built and a future use requires some type of improvement to this design, we might have to consider that. But I'm not suggesting that at some point, we're going to force you to go back to the original design. I don't think we have that authority.
Times change. the original design may no longer meet with working what kind of things that you're trying to improve up there. So I think, as I said, I think you really can't speculate on this at the moment because nobody knows exactly what's going to happen, and it may well be, if there was some development up there, that the particular change which we made in the original on the site plan might not even work with that. So we have no way of knowing, and we can't speculate on it.
Just a question for the applicant. Are you seeking any language in the site plan approval to prevent, constrain, like this is it? We'll never change the road?
No, but since we have one parcel left in Westborough Office Park, and it's 2,300. And when we bought Westborough Office Park, we still had 1,300 West Park Drive, and we had 2,300 West Park Drive. But we weren't grandfathered because although the park had, approval, we didn't have site plan approval for the individual lot.
Right.
So 1,300 West Park Drive, which when we bought it was projected to have a 150,000-foot building, because of its proximity to wetlands, surrounded, we turned it into a parking lot. And we were able to keep a tenant at 1,500 West Park Drive. Well, the same thing for 2,300 is, I think when we bought that, they told us it was around 200,000 feet that we could put there, but really, I think they were exaggerating. It was more like 100 to 150. We couldn't put that there today. But if we go through and say, okay, let's put a building there now that we have the road, let's recover some of our money. We can do that right now. We don't even need to put in the road. It exists to there right now. But let's say we go ahead and build that building, and we come along, okay, we want you to, because you're adding more use to that road, we want you to get rid of that corner and put in the extension that you originally applied.
Yeah.
And that,
Yeah, but you can't ask us to give you a complete waiver from that. And that's the risk you run with any approval.
right, you could change, it's already changed, right? We have a no-build zone now within a certain distance from the wetlands now, right? And we understand that, but,
Mark, realistically, if you build on 2,300, your access is out onto Flanders Road. And that portion of the road has already been reconstructed. That's part of the Mass Works reconstruction part.
Right.
And so we're talking about something that I don't see happening because I can't see people driving back up through West Park Drive to get back. It's much faster to come outside of West Park Drive and outside of the office park there. So, as I said, speculation is speculation, and I think we're getting off the track.
Yeah, I really don't know how to answer that, Mark, because I can't, you might not build on 2,300 till, all 5 of us are off of this board, right? And how can I speak for a future board? I just don't understand how to give you that guarantee, right? To me, if you build this and it's functioning fine, and you come in with a new project and traffic and engineer and everyone says, well, it's still going to function fine, well, then we're fine, right? But I can't envision, we'd have to go through the process, right? There's always going to be a process on that.
As long as you're not asking for any change. What are you presenting us with is something to do with this particular project only. That's what you're looking for, the change in the site plan.
correct,
You're not looking for anything else. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay, well then, that's where we are. So we're just dealing with this plan in front of us where there's a change from the original West Park Drive extension to putting it into the driveway which presently exists. So we're in agreement that that's what we're looking at, and that's all we need to look at this particular moment, as far as I'm concerned.
Caruth is still worried that if we were to develop 2300 West Park Drive, whatever we can do there, that we would be held to what we originally proposed. And I understand you can't do that until, but it's a private road. Just wouldn't make sense for us to do this if that were the case later on, saying, hey, you know, if you're going to add another 50.
We're chasing our tail here, though, Mark.
Right,
You
I
know?
mean, this
I
is
don't
something
understand.
also that you didn't raise until just now. I mean, this is not in discussions we had previously. So, you know, I think we, you know, as far as developing 2300, who knows what's going to happen there? But that's a whole new ballgame.
There's just no way for us to make that kind of blanket guarantee. I don't see any way to do that. I don't know how to, I mean, go ahead.
You've sought this change from the original due to hardship, economic circumstances, correct?
Correct.
And we're working with you in granting that and building a road that's satisfactory based on intended use. So I think in terms of good faith, the board's acting in good faith. You know, we're trying to address the economic changes and the cost of construction and so forth. So we're at a good point here. I'm not really sure what you're asking for because, as we keep repeatedly say, we can't predict the future. I've noted that in a number of deliberations here. We can speculate on what might be built in different locations in town, but until, I think one of the things that's impressed me most about this board and traffic studies is that until you know the exact use of a parcel and the unique aspects of it, it's very difficult to determine what's going to happen. I mean, the MGH traffic study, I noted, granted those changes were changes in the driveway, I think, not in the main road, but there were still extensive discussions, I recall them, about, you know, turn points for fire engines and things like that. So all I would want to be sure of is that this plan is acceptable to town, and it sounds like it is.
But I also think, like, if you came in with an application for 2300 or any of those other lots, whether it's, they're going to most likely be a site plan application, not a special permit. I mean, we took away the special permit requirement and made everything by right up there, right?
Pardon me?
We took away the special permit requirement so that even if you go use the overlay, it's still only a site plan. So the only recourse we have would be reasonable requirements, right? And if you're asking me to say, oh, well, we're not going to ask you for something reasonable, well, I can't do that. But as an applicant, you should know what your position is on a site plan application, right? I mean, and if we put an onerous condition on, you have recourse. Am I?
No, I mean, it's by right development.
So I don't really understand, like if you think it's onerous to go, again, we're speculating on something that hasn't happened. We don't even know it'll happen.
If we're successful and the board approves this, and then what I'm saying is that's it. This is the road that's going forward. We're not going to have to, you know, go and spend another $2 million to do something, you know, because we originally budgeted $2 million, now it's $4 million, you know?
As long as this road works,
Yeah.
right? As long as it works. I mean,
And that we rely on
if
Dan.
100 years from now, this road doesn't work, well, somebody's going to have to improve it.
Well, what about a year or two from now with, let's say, Research Drive? They want to build 750,000 feet. You know, I don't see them chipping in for this yet. We asked. 900 West Park Drive, eClinical. They asked for this extension before we did. They're not chipping in anything. Well, what happens when they start using this extension? And then if we want to build 2300 West Park Drive, and, you know, I have a correction too, is that next February, Olympus right of first offer expires at 1200 and 1400 West Park Drive. So that allows us to put something there. Is that,
Well,
is that
Mark,
going to?
I mean, if you feel that this is not going to work for you, then, we'll just scrap the whole thing and get rid of the Mass Works app, and it'll all be over and done with. So, I mean, is that the direction you want to go, or do you want to
Okay,
proceed
so back up.
accordingly?
We don't have, this board doesn't have the authority to scrap anything with MassWorks, right?
Right,
That's
no.
We're talking about ifs and what ifs, and I just don't understand how we can, I don't understand how you can expect us to, it's absolutely impossible for us to envision the future like that, Mark. There's no way, right?
It's a private road in Westborough Office Park.
I get that.
Yeah.
It was always going to be a private road in Westborough Office Park. If you built it the way you originally proposed, and you came in with a use at 2300,
Same
and it had, and the board determined that there was reasonable street improvements that needed to be made, we would ask you to make those as part of a site plan approval. It's the same process, right? You could have built that road the way it was originally done and come in with a use, and we could have looked at it and said, no, you need to put in X, Y, and Z before that road is acceptable, or before that site plan application is approved. Right? That could happen with any project anywhere in town. So I don't understand how you expect us to envision any, like, I don't envision another use coming in that's,
But see, what we have
Gonna
here is
make this
an office
obsolete.
park that's already been designed, already been approved. The roads are in, the lot lines were done.
right,
And-
again, okay, we're
Yeah.
going round and round on the same issue, right? I don't think we have the authority to grant you some type of, this is good for.
The applicant's not even seeking anything, so I don't even know what we're talking about. We should just move the discussion.
Yeah.
You're not seeking anything additional. You have the right not to do it, or we have the right to build this. So I think that ought to be what we shoot for on the 24th,
Yeah, I mean.
right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking,
Or some other additional condition, we would need to know about that well in advance of the public hearing.
right, I think that's a great point, right?
Don't just leave it at that.
I mean, if you're, yeah.
You guys may go back and confer and decide that you're looking at something, but you have by right development, as you describe, it's all built out. I don't know, I don't think we have an adversarial process here, so until those sites are developed,
I think that's a great point. If
you're seeking something, let us know
If you want
what it
something
is.
more than you're asking for, you need to let us know, right?
in a timely way.
Like, it needs to be, because I don't really see anything other than an application to go to this, right? There's no, some additional waivers, that kind of stuff, but you haven't really put any kind of other requests in writing.
I guess in summary, we're just afraid that later on the rug gets pulled out, because we have a park that's, already approved, it has the MIPA, the Westborough approved these, these lots, and
Yeah, but Mark, right now, we're looking at this. We're looking at this site plan amendment change, and that's it.
And we're looking at this at your request, which is
Yes.
different than the other, and we're entertaining that request, and we're on the verge of approving that, and it's a road that will meet the needs of that property at this time. So I don't know what else we're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if you're, I just,
Yep.
I'm flabbergasted.
yeah,
Let's move the question.
thank you very much.
All right, any other questions on this? Jim, you've been quiet. Any
Nothing further. You heard Dan say that he's already begun meeting with Lisa. I think we're on schedule.
All right, so we'll take this up on the 24th in a public hearing. All right. Thank you guys for coming in. I think we're all set.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is the MVP grant support letter for wastewater study. Jim, are you going to take us through this?
Yes. I'll speak about it off the top of my head. You have in front of you a letter that was drafted by Lisa's assistant, Joe Barcadero, over at the Department of Public Works for a Municipal Vulnerability Program grant. That's what MVP stands for. And the intention of the grant funds is to fund a study to look at groundwater recharge on the site and wastewater recharge to reduce the burden on our sewer treatment plant, which discharges water to the Assabet River. If we can reduce our reliability, I should say our dependence on our wastewater treatment plant, we'll have more capacity in the plant, which will allow us to approve additional flow to the existing treatment plant. So if we can direct additional wastewater to infiltrate on the site where there's a development and not have to send it to the treatment plant, that will give us additional capacity at the plant. This study is intended to investigate those options. So we're looking at the support for a grant application, which would fund a study for groundwater recharge from drainage, stormwater, and wastewater recharge to help our sewer treatment plant.
Would this allow for increase, oh, sorry, is it?
It would not, the flow to the plant would still be the same, reduce the flow to the plant. The idea is to keep not discharge to the river instead of down gradient. It's try to keep the water within the bounds of Westborough, recharge our aquifers.
Thanks for the clarification.
So it won't increase the capacity in any way?
No.
No, okay.
This is more about water sustainability. We need to recharge our system so the wells don't go dry, basically. It's a very new idea. The MVP program has told us that it's very innovative. So it's going to be a difficult task to get, but they're excited, and we're one of the few towns in the state that are looking at this option, getting input out there. So it's really exciting.
Only exciting for engineers. No, I'm excited.
No, it's a cool project.
It is a cool project, and no, I'm supportive of it. I don't know what else to say. Anybody else have any comments?
I would just say it's adaptation is a key to having resilient, addressing climate issues, and this represents like that kind of a master plan in spades where we're at a point where our water resources are challenged already, and this shows innovation, incorporation of new technology and new thinking about restoring water, so.
And it's
Pretty
consistent
exciting.
with our
It's
master
another
plan.
demonstration of the town's commitment
Yes,
to
sustainability.
sustainable growth and development. So I think it's fantastic. I'd make a can I make the motion? While I have other comments.
Anyone else? No.
All right, I move that the planning board approve the support letter for Westborough's fiscal year 23 MVP action grant application, aquifer recharge for water, is dated May 3rd, 2022.
I second the motion.
Any discussion of the motion? All those in favor? That's 5-0.
So Mark, you'll have to sign one of the copies before you leave.
Okay. Next item on the agenda, why don't we take that letter on the Mass Works?
Thank you. As you know, we're going to be making application for the Otis Street Corridor Study MassWorks implementation phase.
How about you, Pen?
And we're going to be applying for a MassWorks grant to complete the multi-use trail, to complete the intersection improvements at Route 9 and Otis Street, to provide the design for 2 new intersections, one at Speedway Plaza and one at the Target driveway, both having signalization. Also to complete the multi-use path to the train station. The support letter that I'm asking for would outline all of those items and be attached to the MassWorks grant that goes to the Commonwealth. Our time is constrained on this. We need to get the application in by June 3rd. Actually, we're shooting for the last day in May. So I have 2 board meetings, actually 1 now, to get your support. So I would have a draft letter for you sometime next week or between the 11th and the 15th for you to review for the 24th. We're having our consultant draft the body of the letter, and then we customize the letter to meet the board that's going to be submitting support. So the Board of Selectmen will submit a letter, the EDC will submit a letter. We're asking our delegation, both our state senator and our state rep, to provide a letter. We've reached out to the towns of Shrewsbury and Northborough, and they both have already told us they would provide a letter of support because the intersection of 9 and Otis Street is a major intersection for cut through to Northborough and access to Shrewsbury, particularly at the intersection of Route 20 and 9. It will improve traffic that backs up sometimes to Route 20. So Shrewsbury is definitely in support of this as well. So there'll be multiple support letters, very similar to what we had for the MassWorks grant at this project here at Flanders Road. So I would urge the board this evening to vote to allow the chairman to sign that letter of support. I would send a draft to you all to look at. But just in the interest of time, so that we don't have to wait till the 24th, I would ask that the chairman be authorized to sign the letter when it's ready.
Any comments?
So move that we authorize the chairman to sign the letter of support for the MassWorks grant for the Otis Street intersection. Otis Street Route 9 intersection.
I'll second.
Discussion on that motion. All those in favor?
Thank you very much.
5-0 in favor. Right. All right, so next item on the agenda, I'd asked everyone to come in with goals and objectives for the future, for the upcoming year. I'm interested to hear if anybody wants to start on that. I'd like to come up with some priorities for this board over the next fiscal year, I guess till the next election, and then maybe we can reassess and try and make this an annual undertaking. So anybody care to start?
I'll start.
Ladies first.
Okay, all right. One of the things I'd like to see us do is have some joint meetings with EDC. I think that they seem to be going along their path, we go along our path, and there's no joint work with them. I'd like to know more about what they're doing, what they're looking at, and how this combines with our planning. So I'd like to, I think Jim is our representative at this point. I don't know if there's anybody else, but I certainly would like a report at our planning board meetings of what they are discussing in their agendas, and if at all possible, maybe quarterly, we could have a joint meeting with the EDC so that we can bounce ideas back and forth. I think it's very important to balance revenue-driven development in the town versus community needs. And I think there needs to be more coordination in this way. I think it's, sometimes with zoning, we get stuck with, things come to us kind of after the fact, and all of a sudden we're presented with projects, and we don't have an opportunity to really look at whether maybe there are better ways to do things or other ways to do things. So I think there needs to be more coordination with the EDC and the community development and the planning board.
So do you have an example, Hazel, of something that's happened where there's been misalignment?
Well, I think one of the problems is that I don't really know what the EDC is doing.
Well, they're trying to attract businesses
Exactly.
of any kind to Westborough.
Right, but the thing is, I think that's something we need to talk about. Whoops, any kind. I mean, what are we looking at? I think we need to try to balance better the revenue versus community needs. And I think this came up particularly in the master plan. There were a lot of things that people raised in the master plan that were community friendly. And one of the things, for example, is the downtown area where they're talking about people wanted a more friendly type downtown. And what if we ended up with the last two businesses that moved in there were insurance and something else? So it's becoming less and less of a walkable downtown because there's nothing there to walk to. And, I think we need to have some discussions with EDC about, quite frankly, about the types of businesses that would enhance our downtown and that kind of thing. As I said, all of a sudden I learned that there's a insurance agency coming in, or, another hairdresser, or, no, leave hairdresser out, but we've had more real estate agents, more insurance, which is not conducive to a walkable downtown, which is what the people in the looking at the master plan, we're looking for a kind of a downtown overlay district. So these all need to work together. So does that give you an example?
Yeah, it does. I would just say
is
that
it?
you touched on the master plan. My comments will surround that to a great degree because everything kind of pivots off that, whether it's our work on zoning or some other things I'd like to see us doing from a grant perspective, but it all is anchored by the master plan and not against a kind of bilateral discussion with the EDC, but I would see the EDC as a key stakeholder in the master plan implementation, and that the kind of dialogue that you're proposing, be had in an urgent way about the master plan's objectives and implementation, but not just with EDC, but with, the other stakeholders who will come to identify. And I guess my only resistance would be the EDC really operates to boost Westborough in the sense of attracting businesses. Zach Wagner has done a great job, I think, as a coordinator to try to develop a better understanding of what the businesses that are here now need. He's doing a lot of listening and outreach. So my only resistance for the board would be constraining us to a meeting process quarterly with just the EDC, where I feel like our time is going to be need to go into master plan implementation, the people on this board.
Yeah, I wonder, we have Jim Robbins is on EDC. Fred is head of the community development department, and he comes to a lot of our meetings. We could probably ask Zach if we wanted to come in and address this. I wonder if just a periodic update.
I've done that, just so you know. Hazel and I spoke about this last week.
Yeah.
And Zach is coming to our next meeting to introduce himself and explain the role of the EDC.
And I'm not suggesting that we don't have joint meetings, but maybe we could
That's all right.
try.
There is a lack of information flow between the various committees and organizations within the town.
Yeah,
and that
but I've
really
seen
bothers me.
that not just with EDC,
Oh,
though.
no,
I've seen that with the Board of Selectmen.
everybody, exactly.
I'm sorry, the Select Board. So I think that, in general, better collaboration with other boards should be a goal, but I think from a specific standpoint, let's try and get periodic updates on what's going on with the EDC and see if that will accomplish what you're hoping, and if not, maybe we can reassess, like with any new process.
I was trying to find I was trying to put forth a goal that I thought maybe we could accomplish. There's no point in putting forth a goal, which, is so long range that it's not going to get done. It's nice if we have some goals we can accomplish.
Saying I'm never going to lose
within
20
a year.
pounds.
Within a year, and that's, one of the things that was important to me, and I just have felt that sometimes we get, projects come and we're looking so hard at the revenue-driven aspects of them that we forget about the community as a whole and their needs, and that's what really bothers me, and I think planning should take that in.
I think that's a point well taken, because I think a lot of people on EDC are business owners and maybe not, we need to remind them of some of the citizens' feelings on some of their, I mean, this is a two-way street.
Yeah,
We need
exactly,
to tell them what
yeah.
they are thinking, and they need to tell us what, we need to tell them what we're thinking, and they need to tell us what they're.
If I could, through the chairman, I think Hazel makes a really good point. I spoke with Zach about this today, and we discussed the master plan and the goals in the master plan that were aimed at economic development. Particularly, we had an economic development subcommittee, as you may recall, on the master plan committee. And we also had a zoning and regulatory review subcommittee. And we talked about the goals that would be relevant to the EDC and how the EDC could help the planning board implement those goals. So when Zach comes in to talk, he's going to talk a little bit about how the EDC would work in cooperation with the planning board to accomplish the master plan. So that's one way to foster cooperation between the two groups while allowing the EDC to fulfill their mission, which is to bring more business to town. But I do think that the point is well taken. All departments can get very parochial with their own mission and forget about how they interface with other departments, because the community is a living, breathing, multifaceted organization, and we need to be aware of each other's roles. So I think cooperation is the key to that.
I would also reinforce your underlying point that as I've sat in this chair for the first time, it's not clear to me how to balance those community interests when we are just looking at a site plan for a new business in town. And, so we've talked about mitigation. So I don't know, I want to let Hazel finish with her goals. So, but I just wanted to reinforce the underlying, there's like a dialectic between open space, complete community nirvana, and commercial and industrial activity, and what is the role of this board
what is the role of planning?
Addressing those?
Yeah.
Pardon me?
I think planning encompasses a lot of things, is the thing. Planning isn't just looking at site plans. I think
Right.
planning should be more than that. And I think that's the thing, excuse me,
But
that
that's
I'd
the
like
point
to
of
see
this,
fostered.
this whole exercise is because I think as planners, we need to do more than just react to applications. We need to
Exactly.
have a vision and share that vision. And anyway, let's finish your
Yeah, the
goals,
only
'cause-
other thing I'm going to bring up, that was my main thing. It really covers so many areas, I think, covers my main concerns, really, and my goals of what's something that I think could be accomplished within the coming year. So that was the reason I'm looking at that aspect. The other thing that I would like to see, if at all possible, is I think that we need to get more information out to the community about what we're doing as planning. I know I get a lot of questions, and people just don't really know what's going on. I wonder if there's some way to provide, I know we have a sort of a website, but is there another way that we can sort of get ourselves in front of the community more so that we can get some more community feedback on the kinds of things? I mean, we've got a lot of stuff through the master plan, but I think that there are other factions and groups within our community that perhaps we should be trying to get some more information out of what their needs are.
Yeah, I think transparency is what you're getting at, as far as, well, maybe a little more than just transparency, but one of the things, we've been doing recently is putting decisions up on the website, but just trying to get out to people what we're doing, and, maybe we go on Westborough TV periodically, or work on our Facebook presence, or, I don't know.
I think the Westborough website does a great job compared to other towns and what we're doing and what we're working on. A lot of other towns, they don't list really anything for their planning.
I think the issue is getting the eyes to the Westborough website, and that's got to be our, if you want to tackle, I go to the website constantly and I see that information, it's definitely presented, but it's actually getting people to the website. And so that would be that would be we could do a mission to do that. I think that's important, to find ways to direct people to our website so they can actually be informed, so they don't come to the town meeting twice a year and then sorry, waste time. Like,
Yeah.
when things can't be solved at that point because all those meetings have already taken place. So I don't know if it's an educational session that we need to do with the voters to explain how the process actually works. But that's definitely one of my major goals. It's people come to town meeting and don't necessarily understand what the purpose of the town meeting is. And, then what happens is time is wasted, and then we're distracted from the main issues that need to be resolved. And so that to me is, I'm not trying to say that we waste time, but time is definitely wasted. And that's definitely a goal I would like as a board, is that we really take, we all have limited time. I really want to, when someone comes with an application, I really want to know everything up front and be able to make a decision right then, and not right then and there, but a quick decision. I think a lot of the process is dragged out from my year of being here.
Yeah, I think we have a legal obligation on a lot of these things to notify abutters and everything else, but I think at some point, maybe if we want true dialogue and true discourse, I don't know, whatever, we need to, get the word out ahead of time. And how do we do that? So
Well,
that we
one
can actually
thing-
get people
yeah.
in here with
Yeah.
public comments.
One of the things that I was just kind of thinking, I know, for example, the senior center has, meet the police chief. That is a group which is growing larger in our community, and many of them do not have computer skills. So to reach people like that, you have to go to them. And I'm wondering whether maybe 4 times in the coming year, maybe we could hold a planning forum at the library and, explain to people what planning is in this town, what the planning board does. I think a lot of people don't understand that or have any idea, and at least we can make the effort to get information out to people. I mean,
I would go further than the library. Maybe we actually go to Arrive
exactly. Yeah,
or
right.
the schools. Or, I know Jim has gone into some of the,
I'm going to a class at the Mill Pond School next week. Yeah, I do that twice a year with the high school and with the middle school. So if I can, I don't want to cut anybody's thoughts off. This is something that we can accomplish in the near term. We can improve our visibility and our public information in the near term. Currently, in the annual report, there's a long discussion of what the planning board's roles and responsibilities are, and an update on all of the projects that are ongoing, and an update on all of the projects that have been accomplished in the last 5 years. And just review your annual report. Our portion of the annual report is 5 or 6 pages long. Additionally, on the website, and I'm just looking for improvement ideas. So please write down things that you think, in addition to these things, could be accomplished. So on our town website, we again explain the role of the planning board with all of our current applications listed. So if you wanted, for instance, to know what the 29 Research Drive project was, the application's online. Now, if you wanted to go see it, you could go see it. If you wanted to see the new subdivision that we were talking about just now, that application, which finally was received completely in the last couple days, it will be online.
But Jim, if, for example, I looked at the website, if, for example, under each of those site plans, you need 2 or 3 sentences telling someone what it is. You look at a site plan and it says, 2527 Research Drive. Well, what does that mean? If there were 3 or 4 sentences saying, this project is X, Y, and Z, I think people might be more interested to go and look at it. I mean, that's an easy fix. But I saw the site plans listed, but as I said, if you see an address, it means nothing. really, to people. And so I would suggest if we could have like a 3-line
All right, so
description.
let's not belabor this, because
Yeah.
I think we can
Yeah,
brainstorm
I'm totally
this
all
till we're
about that.
blue in the face, but
Yeah.
let's get some suggestions and see what's feasible, whether it be, just expanding on the website, but let's put some ideas in writing and
Yeah.
get them over to Jim. as
I
far
think
as
the idea
community
of coffee with the chief is a great one. Chief Laurie has had me speak at the senior center. I used to do it before every town meeting, but he's had me come in at other times. I haven't been in the last year, but he taps different department heads to come to his time at the senior center. And I think that's a great idea that we maybe have our own session with the senior center and maybe another public forum. And we've also done segments on what's called the Frank and Mary Show.
Right.
That I've done a couple on the master plan in the past. So I think we could have more appearances there.
Well, and I think it's important to the community to know who the planning board members are. I mean, they may elect us, but, I think they need to know who we are, which I think is important. Jim is the face of the planning board because he's the town planner, but at the same time, we're the people that are elected, and I think we need to show them, what we're doing and be people. I mean, be a person to them and not just a board.
All right,
That's it.
let's move forward with that, because the 5 people still watching us on Westborough TV. Hazel, that was all you had? Okay, who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I can, because some of these line up. With the Hazel, my whole issue is, with your first point, is the projects that come to us don't necessarily meet what the town is looking for. For example, the billboards. We spent a lot of time on the billboards because we're looking for income into the town, because all I hear is, why are my taxes going up? And I know there's multiple reasons why taxes go up. But at that town meeting, everything got approved was spending money, but any of the projects that actually bring money into the town, for example, the billboards got rejected. So it's managing what kind of projects come across the board that actually are projects that the town wants, so we're not spinning our tires and we're attracting businesses. So that's pretty much your first point over again. And then also it's just getting this board going with the master plan, implementing the master plan, because I'm looking through my homework. I went into the master plan and I started looking at, all right, what are the high priority topics in the 1 to 5 year range? So, and that's how I started looking, all right, these need to be the priorities because the town outlined these are the priorities. And, us getting that board set up is number 1 priority going forward for me. And it's just because I just kept on going through the public health issues, coming out of COVID. I just feel like that we need to have, if you look at public health 1-14 and 1-17, it's just about mental health and behavioral health. It's just, those are tasks that need to be getting that board set up so we can actually tackle those items, because I think we're in unprecedented times. We need to really see how our kids were affected by not going to school, how the community in general has been affected by this. So for me, I just want to make sure that I'm spending my energy, my goal is on those tasks that are 1 to 5 years, and kind of try to knock those out. And by creating a good board of people that we trust, that's the most important aspect for the next foreseeable future for me, because that's what I think.
That's definitely one of my goals as well. I don't know. Do you have any comments on that? No.
I can add comment.
Tim, why don't you go ahead? You've been chomping at the bit.
Well, I've had a list, so
Okay,
I'm going to try to go quickly. I think the first is to applaud your effort to develop goals and objectives. I think when I got on this board, and maybe as a predicate to that, what I've thought about is I still don't know the subcommittees that this board has, a zoning subcommittee, there are others. And I'm also aware, and this would be not only the town planners' participation in other town boards and committees, so I look at those differently, subcommittees of this board versus representatives on this board who, Sustainable Westborough, you know, Bike Transportation and Safety, the 9 you're on. So you could write those down.
Well, so there's really only one subcommittee,
Is it zoning?
the zoning subcommittee.
Yeah, zoning review committee.
Every other board.
Technically,
is-
the DRB is too.
was created by the Board of, the Select Board or CMRPC, you know.
Not the
yes,
design review board. You
so- I
created
mean,
that.
that's not, CMRPC is not really a subcommittee, but like the
We have a liaison. so-
capital expenditure.
Yeah, without getting into
That's a
detail.
liaison.
Right. I think having, you know, for John, for myself, just a map almost
Yeah, a
of
complete
where
list,
all that
like a-
goes. ZRB, for example. And the reason I only lay that out first is there's a lot of work that these volunteers do on this committee.
Right.
So I'd want our annual goals and objectives as this board to probably be pretty modest in length, but things that we could accomplish. And they may be more related to master plan implementation. I have an inkling that the master plan implementation and driving the dialogue, that multilateral dialogue, that sticking with those priorities, that we're the town board that's most responsible for and needs to take leadership on implementation there. And a way that we do that, I think the way I've experienced that, serving on Sustainable Westborough as well as this board, is by being, it's information. You have to be a part of it. Like you're on the DRB, so the sign observation that you've been making, you know, signage, it's a big deal.
One of the
So how do we
things-
incorporate all
I
that?
mean, one of the things that I'll follow up on just briefly for a second is the fact that I think we need more reporting to the planning board at our meetings from, for example, I should be reporting after we've had a DRB meeting every time it happens. John would be reporting from zoning, you from Sustainable Westborough.
Yep.
Whatever subcommittee or liaison position you have, you should be coming back to the board and reporting on what you've done. And that's something that
That's
has
a
not
really
been
good
done
process.
before.
Okay.
And that's a process I think.
I
could
think
be
that's a really
easily
good process suggestion.
instituted.
So let's make a point, maybe Kristen could identify, you know, all those committees, and then I think one of the things we have to realize, like, I serve on other committees, but as a representative of open space, but I'm on open space as a representative of this board, so it might be good to include those in the sense that if you want to know what Hakamaka's doing,
I think the town boards and committees, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, the town-sanctioned boards and committees establish slots for a planning board representative.
I'm on the historical commission, but they don't have a planning board slot. It just, I happen to be on it.
So it's understanding that distinction.
Yeah.
You know, where are these board members? We have to cover the seats in
Right.
those other committees as a first step.
so if we,
And then updating this board on those slots, and then over and above that is there, you know, like
Regular reports,
CMRPC,
yeah.
you know, is there grant or work they're doing that we could take advantage of?
Yeah, just an update saying, you know, this is what we talked about at the last CMRPC meeting, or the last capital expenditures meeting, or the last
News and
open
notes.
space meeting, right?
That's a really good,
And maybe even we're going to have an open space meeting next, you know, in case, and this is on the agenda or something. That might generate interest in the public, it might generate interest from other board members.
It's one way to get the information out to the public. I mean, if we're
Correct.
talking about the boards and people that are watching this will know that these things are coming up, because you don't always go to the website, you know, go to the town website.
I
And gee,
think a
open spaces meeting, you know.
I think along those lines, I think I'd like to know, maybe be more apprised of what ZBA is doing, because I feel like there's there
Yeah,
should
that's
be
another one.
kind of
Another
a
one, yeah.
back and forth between us, and I think it's one of the few boards that you can't subscribe to their agendas
No, you can't.
online. You know, like I can subscribe to I subscribe to many agendas, more than I probably should, but where I get notified of the Board of Selectmen's
Right.
agenda automatically, and I get notified of, but I can't do that with the ZBA agenda.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and I find that a little frustrating, because, there may be things on there that I feel that planning should weigh in on, and unless they ask us to weigh in on that, again, I don't want to step on another board's toes, because they're doing a fine job, but I just, from an informational standpoint, if they're constantly dealing with the same issues like in-law apartments, right? We address that with a zoning change and hopefully and I guess I want to know and I don't mean to just single out that board, but I like the whole idea of let's spend a little time at each meeting getting updates on our,
Respective assignments.
right, okay.
And I think that that would serve to address two issues that Hazel's highlighted. One is the siloism between boards and committees.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's, a sin of commission. I think the people that serve on all of those things are really so close to the weeds that they're not even aware of the crossover. And so the reporting process here presents the public with a list of what's going on, and raises questions for us. So enough said there.
Can I just ask, did you
Yeah.
make up that word?
What?
Siloism?
No.
I knew exactly what you meant by it, but I'd never heard it before.
Yeah, no, the silos in bureaucracies and corporations, I've spent a lot of time with those, actually. But master plan implementation, we've talked about a lot. So I guess I wanted to use that. I'm not thinking we need extra goals and objectives, but where the master plan implementation is on our plate, what are our deliverables this year?
Yeah.
What do we need to work urgently to do? Now, we've got VHB, but the calendar marches on. So another, kind of broader process thing here is I was thinking about, and this is not a big deal, but if we were to do some planning ourselves, the select board is doing their offsite, their last one this week, which is a public meeting. But the idea that might be that we meet on some sort of annual cycle offsite to just identify what it is we want to accomplish. I didn't get through the thinking on that, but I was questioning myself whether that would follow the election cycle, whether that would follow the fiscal year cycle, or whether that would best serve us by following the calendar year
Yeah,
cycle.
you're
So
talking
I don't-
about a retreat,
Pardon me?
a day retreat or something.
Yeah, just to kind of get our bearings for the upcoming
I mean, I
year.
think that's what this exercise is really
Okay.
intended to do without actually having a formal retreat. But if we want to go that route, we can try that. I don't know.
Well, I think
I don't
there's
really know
some.
what the difference is.
All right, let me get to the other items here, because one is one you've, or Peter touched on, I think, which is the warrant article process. We need to have a tighter process, in my opinion, leading up to the annual town meeting, so that we're not caught like we were last year. I mean, I was just very uncomfortable for it. I mean, I'll just give you my comments. My feeling is that if we're, as a planning board, submitting a warrant article to town meeting, I want to know who's driving that petition. I want to have some ability to reject that, right, coming through the door if it's an applicant who's a commercial or a private residential person. So I think the digital billboards were a good example of that. That sort of dropped out of the sky, and all of a sudden I have a broader quarrel with town meeting in that I believe every warrant article should have a sponsor, someone who stands up and advocates for it. I felt like we were the victim of that a little bit with regard to the change in the town planner reporting role.
But
In that
then-
we had to
yeah.
have the town manager come here and speak for it. Nobody was speaking for it. So I guess what I'm saying is, if this board is bringing warrant articles,
Or if we're supporting them.
Right.
That's really the important thing.
I think
It's
the
not-
burden's a little less there, but
Yeah, I mean, I think that the supporting, that was the one with, part of the billboards part of it was supporting. And, I mean, the only time that we're constrained, I think legally, I would guess, is that if it's a citizen's warrant article.
Right.
that we would have nothing to say about.
Yeah, I think we need
some other process.
we need to get, like, there's no need to rush zoning changes. And I feel like we've been very last minute in getting these, hearings in. Sometimes we finish a hearing even after the warrant is
Written.
is finalized and closed, and we end up going to town meeting with different language. And I think that has to end. We need to set a deadline and say, look, if we haven't posted a public hearing by, a month or whatever the deadline is before town meeting or before the warrant closes.
Before the warrant's
then it's just
finalized.
not going to get on that warrant. And whoever it is that's driving it needs to wait for the, unless there's an exigent circumstance
yeah.
that, the Olympus special town meeting was a special circumstance, right? But,
That was for TIF.
right,
Yeah.
something, well, there was a zoning change involved, wasn't it?
No zoning change for them.
Oh, well, then it was Pulte that we had a
Yeah,
zoning change.
where we're asked to support, or if there's a petitioner for this board to support, that needs to be a lot clearer.
I
when we
think that's a
deliberate.
great idea. Thank you. You're going to have, you as a board are going to have to fend off the slings and arrows of every other committee that wants you to change something for the benefit that they've identified, whatever that is.
Right.
And so I think we should publish a schedule for a zoning amendment. And, I wrote one, how to back into it. So here's when the warrant is set. So here's when the selectmen vote. Here's when we need to vote. So this is when a public hearing needs to be posted. And before that, we need to have a report of the zoning review committee. And it actually extends out 3.5 months.
3.5 months.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. I want to start that 3.5 months ahead.
Yeah, I think
and
we
know what's on the radar for
We
us.
need to put that on the website. We need to send that out to every committee in town, so that everybody understands that we're not, racing to the finish line on these items, because it just makes us look bad. And
Right.
Yeah.
Get in line. No, I mean, if this is the schedule, if you want to be considered, let us know up front, and we'll work with you to do it. If you want to come in a month ahead of the meeting, we probably don't have the bandwidth or time to really work with it, and that's,
Yeah, and I think it leads to failure, because I think when there's too many unanswered questions, it's a no vote.
right. That's it. It needs to be ready to go to the town, and I feel like we need to be in a position of, if not unanimous support, we're asking the town to approve something, right? If it's coming from us. And then the support of other articles is more, what are the feelings of each individual board member about those? But it's equally important that we weigh in. All right, so enough said. I'll write these up for you too, because I know you'd enjoy to have my notes. Zoning bylaw rewrite. I've heard a lot. You've all educated me a lot about that. I feel like a goal this year could be, what are our options and costs? And a means of getting that would be a request for information to the preeminent firms that do this, meaning the law firms that have zoning bylaw practice. And my goal out of that would be to understand what our options are. We have a contract out right now.
You mean a substantive review, not a intuitive organization?
Yeah, I would.
Substantive review.
Yes, substantive review, so that we're preparing the town. Like, I want us at the Capitol, when Pete is at the Capitol appreciation, the Capital Management Appropriation meeting, ultimately, we're preparing the town for costs but before we get to those costs, we have to know how we want to go about it. So I've been impressed, Hazel, just about your observations of the existing book. And I feel like every time we do a warrant article, like the overlay or digital signs, we're just contributing to more layering.
Yes, we are.
And so enough said about that. I feel like, we don't have the time to do that research. I've done a little groundwork research on my own, and You know, there's approaches to doing that,
Oh, yes.
right? And they're very expensive, and I understand that.
And I think we could tap our planning consultant, VHB, to see what they've seen in other towns. What would they recommend we
But I-
choose, of course?
I think
Good idea.
this team, you know, by the end of the calendar year, having some sort of clarity on how to go about that would be helpful. Mitigation, Mark's mentioned that. I think mitigation is also something we should have a clearer idea on the end of the year. And it's, for me, it's the back end stuff that's also missing. And by that, I mean, what are the existing funds that have already been set aside? I know Leah Talbot, I'm not sure whether there's something more than Flanders Road, but I mean, like, what are we looking at? How will those be spent, right? So if we're able to come up with a mitigation scheme, and I'm talking about one for by right development, that's addressing the other needs that the town has, and that applicants could understand when they come for by right development, these are the goals. Now, I know we went through all of the legal review last year. Mitigation needs to be proximate to the project. It ties back in all of those ways. So whatever the mitigation is that we seek, it needs to be legal and it needs to be tied to something. But I'm more concerned about the back end of it, is if we collect nominal amounts from individual applicants, are we working toward a goal? Flanders Road and East Main Street, for example, where is that on the DPW's list? Do we need to go to Mass DOT? I've heard varying things on that.
So this was one of my.
Okay, so let me let you talk to it.
So this was one of my goals too, is because, I've been advocating for this for a while. I feel like we need to get away from negotiating individual applications and trying to get, them to pay mitigation of whatever it is, if it's a residential project, sidewalks, or if it's a commercial project, street improvements, or B-Walt improvements. I would rather standardize some type of formula so that if a project comes in that's going to generate traffic, there's a formula that says this is what you're going to have to pay in mitigation related to the increased trips. Or a project comes in, it's going to increase the strain on the schools. Here's a mitigation formula in place. And I think we can do that, and I think we can do that legally, but so that, from everything I've heard, applicants need certainty, right? And if we put that in writing we talked about putting it into our site plan review regulations, but I think we should have maybe it's a different formula for special permits, because maybe it's a higher level of mitigation. I don't know, right? Or maybe, we just standardize it, and then if a special permit needs further mitigation, that's where we negotiate. I don't know, but I just want to standardize that so that an applicant coming in has some certainty to say, okay, this is what they're going to ask me for, this is what I'm going to have to pay. And then if we set up some type of mitigation fund that can be spent flexibly, then the town has some discretion in how it spends that fund, as opposed to us saying, well, this mitigation is going to be for Flanders Road. And I know it has to be related, but I feel like there's a way to set that up, and I think I've seen that in other towns where they just put it into a mitigation fund, and then the town has discretion on how to spend it.
Yeah, but it's the front end piece that the town council came down pretty hard on, the legality
That you've
of.
got to be pretty careful about.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'd be concerned about. The other thing, just as a caveat to that, is the fact, and we talk about mitigation all the time, but what concerns me is getting mitigation funds and putting them in this huge pot, and there they kind of sit and they don't get used. And there are a lot of small projects which could be done in this town to benefit the community. For example, people have asked me recently whether there is no good tot playground like there is in Northborough. The one at Bay State does not really work.
Why not?
It's one of those things that I'd like to see something accomplished, and that money sits there, and we can't point to it and say, okay, we used that money to do X. It sits there until we get piles of money and we think of some big project. Well, let's look at some smaller things that might benefit the community.
Yeah, and so I don't know how I feel about that, because if we, let's say we have a mitigation, and part of it is, well, infrastructure, sidewalks and streets, and we put that into a fund that can be spent for sidewalks and streets. I'd rather, instead of, doing $20,000 worth of improvements on this street, I'd rather build that fund so that when the town decides to put sidewalks down Ruggles, we have some money put aside, so we don't have to go to the town and borrow, get an appropriation article to borrow $10 million.
I'm going to be dead and buried by the time that happens.
Well, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
But I want to look at accomplished things. I want to be able to show the community that we've used this money to do something.
I feel strongly about that too. That's why I keep talking about the back end, because I think you'd need to be transparent both about the formula, and you're saying you would.
Yeah.
But it's a tax. It's just a punitive cost. And unless everyone can see that there's a sight line to doing little projects or something, I mean, they're saying they want certainty. Amazon certainly, put a lot of money in on doing some things, but the issue is, how is that going to be spent? If there's no sight line to spending it, what are we doing? We're just a taxing authority.
And that's why I think we need to create a mechanism that can be more flexible in how the town uses the money.
I think it just needs to be transparent also on the back end, and the ways of spending it, the people contributing to it need to know it could go to a playground on the other side of town, or whatever it might be.
Well, that's where we have to be careful, because we can't ask for mitigation on this project and say, oh yeah, we're going to use it for a playground over here that has nothing to do with this
Well,
project.
that's why we need you need some legal advice as to how you can write
But
that.
again,
And some models from other towns. So when you brought this up originally, I was like, get on you, brother, go for it. But I think bringing us models from other towns,
Okay.
and then we don't need to reinvent the wheel. If this has been done and done legally and successfully, let's look at those models and adopt them.
Let me get you the.
That would be
Look
it.
at some examples. I'll put those together. And
Well, if you think we can do that this year, that
Well,
would be
again, I'm
great.
not an attorney, but whatever we propose is
Yeah,
going to
but
have
the
to
other
get through
towns.
legal reviews.
Yeah. And then the last item isn't really a goal or objective, but I think we need to have an annual review process for the town planner position. We need to do that quickly, and we need to put that in place. So Jim or his successor, that we can't, I'm fine with the way things worked out on the Warren article. And, but if we're going to live up to our charter, then we have to execute the duties and responsibilities in that charter.
Yeah.
And one of them call for that, so I'll leave it at that.
And
That's the last one.
we did talk about the fact, I think at some point, that Christie does an annual review of town. I mean, there are models that we
For
can
the
use.
department heads.
That's right. There are models that we can use. It's not like we have to approach this
No.
from nowhere.
He does an annual public review of the superintendent.
Yeah.
And I actually had a good conversation with Lester Hensley, who was chair before me, and he's actually working on like an outline, because he spoke against that change, and he felt that he wanted to be part of the solution and not just part of the problem. And I think, so he's going to get back to me with an outline of his thoughts on that, and maybe we can put that. So I'm going to reach back to him and see where he's at on that, and see what, because I agree that it needs to be transparent. It needs to be
Sensitive.
formulaic,
Yeah.
because otherwise it feels like it doesn't get, it just doesn't get done properly.
Right, but as Hazel's pointing out, there's a process in place for the other department heads.
Right.
and some of those are public, some are not, but I'm feeling like we can adapt what the town's protocols are pretty quickly and just do the work. You know, Jim would start with a self-assessment. I'm sure it starts there on some level. You know, what have we accomplished? What are we doing? It doesn't need to be onerous. We just need to have one.
Yeah.
We can't, shirk our
I
duties, that's it.
I'm good with that. All right, and nothing else?
Thank you.
Okay.
That's the end.
Did we cover everything you had?
I mean, pretty much. We got a lot on the plate here.
No, I know we
No, I
did.
would say just really community involvement. I thought that was a pretty big one, and then just interacting between other boards. I mean, this is only my second month here, so still a sponge, soaking it all in, so.
All right, so I'll get to mine, and we did cover a lot of mine. I think that the Housing Choice Act needs to be definitely on our radar. We've got some deadlines that reach into next year, but we need to be prepared and get ready and come up with a solution that works for this town. And I think it may need to be more than just our regular public hearings. We might want to talk about some charrettes, I think they're called,
Yep.
or
Design
at least some
charrettes.
public information, like sessions where we, maybe some surveys, maybe, again, I don't know where we want to go with it, but it could be a big change, and it's kind of being forced on us by the state, but that doesn't necessarily mean it won't be a positive change, but I think it's going to be on us as a board to adapt it to Westborough's needs, right? And not just necessarily go with the easiest solution, right? And so I think that's, again, I have a lot of thoughts on it. I don't think we need to go into every little detail of those now, but it might be something, we have a housing choice subcommittee. So I guess
Other
we have
one,
two.
yeah, we have more. We have more than you think.
Jim, you have comments?
Yeah, just to inform you a little bit about the MBTA Communities Housing Choice Act. The regulations, as you know, have still not been finalized and promulgated. And information that I have learned from my colleagues that work at different levels in planning along the state, both at the State House and in the regional planning agencies, have told me that there has been so much concern over the way that the regulations were written prior to receiving comment from the municipalities, that they are seriously retrenching on their timelines for promulgating the final regulations, which will probably affect when you need to have this complete. And I think that that's correct, because as you probably know, the planners didn't write this legislation. It was written by legislative aides. And so the planners have reacted, saying, well, why didn't you ask the planners what they thought when you came up with this idea? Because we would have talked about infrastructure limitations. I've even heard this from town councils and the MMA, who have said that you don't understand that even though you're creating the zoning, you're creating the forerunner for the development. And so the courts have said if you can deliver the resources, you must deliver the resources. And that causes a lot of communities like ourselves to panic because we have wastewater capacity limitations. And so the planners would have preferred to have conditionalized the regulations as opposed to making them edicts where it's a carrot and a stick. If you don't do this, we're taking your grant money away. And some towns feel like, well, we can't do that, so I guess we're not going to be able to apply for grants. They're feeling like they need to rethink the regs, and I think it's a good idea. But I'm just letting you know it may affect the timeline.
Yeah, and that's fine, but I don't think it's going to, short of repealing the law, I think it's something that is coming, and I don't think it's any.
Yep.
Your point about infrastructure is well taken, right? Like we passed an overlay, a downtown overlay, with the idea that that was going to stimulate, redevelopment downtown. it's just impossible to do without sewer capacity. And until we sort that out as a town, it's really hard to tell you can't tell a company to come in and redevelop downtown when they would have to put a private sewage on a half an acre lot. It's just not realistic. It's not doable.
Not a lot of places to put that septic system.
Yeah, and your building's like the arcade block, and it's just not going to happen.
And I felt like and I was a big proponent of the downtown overlay, and I thought it was going to have a change, and we've only seen 1 or 2 projects take advantage of it, and they already had sewer capacity.
How many years ago did you do that?
Well, you had 25 West Main Street, which is a big success. You also had the residents on the Common at Bay State Commons, which were 2 good examples of residential development. But you've also had Westborough House of Pizza and a couple other
Yeah,
small.
but those weren't, the only depot, Randy Waterman's building,
All of those I just mentioned were depots.
put in
What about
25
the,
West Main Street is a depot, residential mixed use.
25 West Main Street.
Bay State
was
Commons was the first one.
Westborough House of Pizza, wasn't it?
Westborough House of Pizza took advantage of the height privileges that were
Okay.
granted to them.
All right, so maybe it's more projects, but it wasn't more projects. They didn't have sewer capacity to really do anything other than minor change. I mean, I guess 25 West Main Street was probably the best example of what we were hoping would
Yeah, I think you're right.
accomplish with that zoning. Anyway,
Good discussion.
yeah, I think that was probably, the only other thing I wanted to ask the board, as far as an objective, we have the Community Preservation Act on the ballot in the fall. And I don't think as a board we want to get too involved with helping that pass or anything, but I just wanted to see whether we, as a board, get involved with that as far as information, or maybe we just sit by as spectators and see what happens. I don't know. You know, I would like to see it pass. I think it would be good for the town, but I don't know that it really involves us in our role as planners. So I just wanted to see what your
More as individuals.
I guess to me, it would depend on, I mean, for example, is the Board of Select going to be asked for a letter of support? You know, who is going to be asked? You're on the committee, Mark, aren't you?
Well, the committee is really done with
dissolved?
discharge.
Okay.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's dissolved, but we've discharged our duty, which
Right.
was to make a recommendation.
So the question in my mind is, what would be appropriate? I mean, are all the boards in town going to be asked to support this, for example, or is it going to be community organizations? My inclination would be community organizations, the people that really need to get behind it. I would think.
Yeah, that was
more
my
than
feeling too, but I just
particular
wanted to bring it
boards.
up because it's on the
Yeah.
horizon for the future year.
Yeah, and I think as much as anything else, probably as individuals, because it's not really a planning thing in the sense that it's money, but the money is earmarked for certain specific things. So it isn't a matter of saying, well, you know, we'll build a new senior residence. I mean, it's not going to work. So, you know, there are very specific rules and regulations as to what you can use that money for. It isn't just, am I right, Jim, on that? Yeah, so that consequently, I think maybe planning, you know, I think we'll probably stick to individuals on it, maybe.
All right.
Might be the best way to go on that.
I think, as you pointed out, it's on the ballot, right?
Yeah.
It's not a town meeting. right?
Exactly.
It's on the
Well, it
voting.
was already a town meeting.
Right,
So
we did
now it
that.
goes on the ballot,
Yeah.
and if it passes on the ballot, then
It's like any political thing. I mean, in the sense, would you support a candidate? I mean, or a measure that's on the ballot? I mean, it wouldn't be appropriate for a town organization to come out and, let's say there's a change in ABC regulations. It would not be appropriate for the town to come out and
Weigh
support that
in on
one.
that, right.
Exactly. So I think we can.
So
just
there'll
look
be
at it
some
that
sort
way.
of community support for and against the vote. I would think somebody will organize for and against,
Oh, that will definitely.
you
I
know,
would think there'd be
speaking
some-
toward it. So
Yeah,
then
I'm
we
sure
can-
there'll be signs out that will say support.
When is the ballot?
The fall election, when is that, November?
Second Tuesday, first Tuesday, second Tuesday. What is the regular election? Whatever it is. I never can remember if it's the first or second Tuesday.
First,
Time to think about it.
first Tuesday in November.
The first.
That's
Tuesday
10
in
goals, by the way. I took them all down. Housing choice was the 10th.
We're only doing
That's
two.
good, though. 10's actually, I expected more. I think there will be more when you see the master plan implementation, so.
All right, so that brings us to, we did have a master plan implementation discussion on the agenda. Is there any,
I have reached out to VHB, and I expect a master plan implementation scope and a proposal to proceed. So let's see what Donnie gives us back.
Usually pretty good.
Review that on the 24th.
I don't know, I'm hoping so. I hope to have it by the 17th. So, but I haven't heard from him. I'll contact him again tomorrow, see where it's
So
at.
we just need to be prepared to be, three of us need to be here on the
can't
17th,
hear
or we
Oh,
need to be
didn't have-
prepared.
hold on, too many
Must be
conversations.
away.
One second.
He sent me like a response, because I asked him if he could get it in next week.
Okay, good.
He sent a response to the shy internet access, so it sounds like.
Okay, we'll reach out to him tomorrow, see where he's at.
All right, so to summarize, you're going to reach out to the proponents from the two public hearings, and
First thing,
for now, we're going to plan on a meeting on the 17th and the 24th. Jim will let us know if, either way, we still need at least three people.
Yep.
So it can't be me because I won't be in state.
I could be there too.
okay, 4 people, that's great.
As long as you guys are okay with that solution, again, I don't mind doing it remotely, but I would prefer to be here for it. It's just,
Oh, yeah, no, I think
We
the
make it-
public hearing, that's, yeah. No, I think you have to be, because
no,
of
that's a
the,
great idea.
can we, because
We
of the
can post it
governors,
as a, we
We
can
can
post
post it
it
as a hybrid meeting.
it has to be a hybrid, but I think you have to have somebody, you have to have some people in person now.
Well, we will be here, some of us.
Right, well, we will be, that's what I'm saying, is
Well, I'm
that,
saying we can make it all remote.
Yeah, you could post it as a
100%.
Oh,
remote,
you can put us at 100% remote.
and then everybody just has to dial in on Zoom.
That would be good for the 17th.
And vote to continue those two hearings.
That would be ideal.
all right, as long as we've got the okay from Spectrum and the,
Well, they have to write a letter requesting the
Right,
continuance, so.
yeah.
So I kind of have a feeling that that's not the right thing to do in this case, because when you met at the last meeting, you informed people that the hearing would be continued to the 17th here. So let's say I'm not watching the town website, I think I know where I'm going. On the 17th, I show up and there's no meeting.
I would feel more comfortable to have at least some people in.
I'm happy to
It's
go.
up to you guys, 'cause,
I just,
But let's do post it as hybrid if, well, I suppose Mark can join remote
Or we post it as
regardless.
hybrid.
it's just me.
Okay, all right.
no, I
then
just
let's not
think
do
because
anything.
of the fact that, yeah, Jim's right. I mean, since people are now having regular meetings, I just feel more comfortable moving it all to remote when people are now expecting us to actually be there.
No, but I like your thinking, Kristen, saving us a little bit.
Nice job, Kristen.
Yeah.
Good thought.
All right, so were the minutes? No, I didn't see minutes on the agenda. Okay. Any other business?
No, I would like to talk to you after the meeting.
I will entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second,
Okay, all those in favor? That's 5-0 in favor.
done.
Decision.